In the dark and silent hospital room, a business tycoon fights for his life while overhearing secrets over the phone. The city lights never seemed so distant for David. On the other end of the line, someone plots against him, unaware that each word is heard by a hidden ally. What really happened on that icy winter night? And how far would people go to secure their future, discover the dark secrets and surprising twists that will forever change their lives? But before you go, don't forget to like the video and follow us for more thrilling stories. David Harper was a man of many talents and possessions. He was not only the owner of a chain of luxury hotels spread across the United States, but also a visionary, always seeking innovation and excellence in everything he did. David was known for his relentless work ethic and the generosity he showed towards his employees. He was married to Emily, an elegant and charming woman, who seemed to be the perfect partner for a man of his caliber. However, as often happens in stories of great fortune, not everything was as it seemed. David started his days early, waking up before dawn to review reports and plan meetings. The soft light of early morning barely lit the room when David's alarm rang at 4:30 a.m. He would rise immediately, avoiding any temptation to stay in bed. He sat at the work desk in his home office, opening his laptop to check the financial and operational reports from the previous day. Each line of numbers and charts was carefully analyzed as he noted observations and plans for the day. His strong black coffee was always at hand, helping to keep his focus and energy. David was meticulous, personally taking care of the details of his businesses and ensuring that each hotel operated with the same precision and luxury he had envisioned from the start. He took pride in the standard of excellence he had established. His mind was always filled with ideas for improvements and innovations. "If every detail is not perfect, we are not doing our job right," he often said to himself while reviewing the renovation plans for one of the hotels in Chicago. He spent hours on video calls with his managers, discussing everything from room design to the quality of room service. Emily, on the other hand, enjoyed the benefits of David's wealth, keeping herself busy with social events and shopping for the latest fashion trends. She would wake up later, around 9, and start her day with an elaborate breakfast prepared by the personal chef. Her time was divided between visits to spas, lunches with friends at elegant restaurants, and shopping at luxury boutiques. "Life is too short to not enjoy what we have," Emily would say to her friends while trying on a new expensive dress. Although her life seemed glamorous, there was a sense of emptiness that she hid well behind smiles and laughter in public. They had a cordial relationship in public, but behind the scenes, the relationship was cold and distant. On the rare occasions they were together at home, the conversation was minimal and often limited to practical or superficial matters. Emily avoided asking about David's business, and he rarely showed interest in her social events. "How was your day?" David would ask more out of obligation than genuine interest. "It was good. I went to the club with the girls," Emily would reply, turning her attention back to her phone. The huge house, although filled with luxury, felt empty and echoed the silence between them. Among David's trusted employees were Maria, the general manager of one of the most important hotels in the chain in New York, and Henry, the senior receptionist who had worked for the Harper family for decades. Maria was efficient and dedicated, taking care of every detail with the same passion as David. She arrived at the hotel at 6 in the morning, inspecting each floor to ensure everything was perfect before the guests woke up. "Good morning, Maria. Is everything in order?" one of the employees would ask. "Good morning. Sure, but let's check the pool area. I want to ensure it's impeccable," she would respond with a determined smile. Henry, with his wisdom and experience, was the keeper of the Harper's secrets and a silent observer of family dynamics. He remembered the days when David was just a curious boy, running through the hotel corridors. Time flies, but some things never change, Henry would think as he organized the reception for a group of VIP guests. His calm presence and kind words were a comfort to everyone working there. "Henry, you always know what to say," a young receptionist would comment. "I've just learned to listen more than I speak," Henry would reply with an enigmatic smile. Everything changed on an icy winter night. The snow fell heavily, covering the streets with a thick and treacherous layer. David was driving home after a long business meeting in Manhattan. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard, noting that it was past 11 at night. His thoughts were still caught up in the details of the meeting, while the road ahead became increasingly dangerous. Suddenly, as he made a turn, David realized too late that there was a patch of ice on the asphalt. "Damn," he exclaimed, trying desperately to control the steering wheel. The car skidded violently, the tires lost grip, and before he could react, the vehicle began to spin uncontrollably. The sound of screeching tires was replaced by the frightening noise of metal twisting as the car flipped several times before coming to a stop in a ditch, upside down. The ambulance arrived quickly, lighting up the accident scene with flashing red and blue lights. The paramedics rushed to the vehicle, finding David unconscious and severely injured. They worked urgently to stabilize him, carefully placing him on a stretcher. "We have to be quick. He's losing a lot of blood," one of the paramedics said as they called the nearest hospital. David was rushed to the ICU of a major New York hospital, where the doctors decided to put him in an induced coma to try to save his life. "We'll do everything we can," the head of the medical team said, looking at David's pale and bruised face. Emily was notified and arrived at the hospital in tears. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she trembled from both cold and shock. As she entered the ICU, the sight of her husband connected to various machines and tubes made her collapse. "David, please be well," she whispered between sobs, holding his hand. She kept a vigil by her husband's side, refusing to leave the room even when the nurses suggested she rest. However, her concern was superficial. Deep down, as she looked at David's motionless face, Emily began to plan her future without him. Her thoughts wandered to the immense fortune she would inherit and the freedom it would bring. "If David doesn't survive, what will I do with all this money?" she thought, trying to push away the guilt that threatened to overwhelm her. Emily imagined herself traveling the world, buying properties in exotic places, and finally living the life she always desired, free from the restrictions and demands that came with being a business tycoon's wife. As the days passed, Emily maintained the appearance of a devoted wife, but her heart was divided. Each visit from the doctors brought uncertain news about David's recovery, and every minute by his side made her reflect more on her choices and desires. "Do I really care what happens to him?" she would ask herself, trying to find an answer that wouldn't make her feel like a terrible person. The coldness of their relationship now seemed like a disguised blessing, offering her a glimpse of what her life could be moving forward. Days turned into weeks, and David gradually began to regain consciousness. The first sensations were confusing, as if he was emerging from a foggy dream. His eyes blinked under closed eyelids, but he still couldn't open them. Indistinct sounds reached his ears, voices and machines, but he couldn't respond. He was trapped in his body, unable to move or communicate, but his brain was fully functioning. "Where am I? What happened?" he thought, trying to understand the situation. During one of her visits, Emily entered the room with firm steps. She didn't know David was conscious, and he heard every word spoken in his presence. Once, as she sat beside his bed, her phone rang. It was Thomas. "Hi, dear. Yes, I'm here at the hospital," she said, with a soft tone David hadn't heard for years. David listened, horrified, as Emily discussed her plans to inherit his wealth and take over the management of his businesses. "Thomas, we need to be patient. As soon as David is no longer here, everything will be ours. We'll sell some parts of the hotel chain. That will give us enough money to pay off your debts and ensure our financial security," she said, her voice full of coldness and calculation. David felt a wave of panic and anger rising within him. "Is she planning to let me die to take my money?" he thought, incredulous. He desperately tried to move a finger, open his mouth, do anything to show that he was there, conscious and listening to every word, but his body did not obey. Emily and Thomas were so sure of their impunity that they didn't notice the figure of Henry, the elderly receptionist, lurking in the hallway. Henry, who knew Emily's tricks well, paid attention to every word. He discreetly approached the slightly open door, listening to everything. "She can't do this to Mr. David," Henry thought, feeling a mix of outrage and determination. He knew he had to act, but he needed to be careful. Henry decided to gather more evidence before confronting Emily. He silently returned to the reception desk, where he began to plan his next steps. "Mr. David has always trusted me. I won't let him down now," he promised himself. Meanwhile, David, trapped in his body, could only wait and trust that someone would discover the truth before it was too late. Each passing day, He fought internally to regain control of his body, determined to expose Emily and protect his legacy. With David out of commission, Emily began to implement drastic changes in the business. She sat at David's large office desk, surrounded by piles of documents and a newfound sense of power. "It's time to do things my way," she murmured to herself, determined. Her first order of business was to fire loyal employees, starting with Maria, the dedicated general manager. Maria was called into Emily's office. "Maria, your dedication to the hotel is undeniable, but we are going through a restructuring," Emily said in a cold, professional tone. "Your position is being eliminated, and your services are no longer needed." "But, Mrs. Harper, I have dedicated my life to this company," Maria replied, her voice choked with emotion. "I know how these hotels work better than anyone." "I appreciate your work, Maria, but my decision is final," Emily cut her off, already standing to signal the end of the conversation. Maria left the office in shock, tears in her eyes. She felt a heavy weight in her chest, not just from the loss of her job, but from concern for the future of the hotels she loved so much. "This isn't right," Maria thought, seeking comfort in Henry. Henry, who had worked for the Harper family for decades, greeted Maria with an understanding look and a comforting hug. "We're going to find out what's really going on, Maria," he said firmly. "Mrs. Emily can't do this with impunity." Together, they began to suspect Emily's true intentions. Maria and Henry decided to secretly visit David in the hospital. They used the cover of night, arriving discreetly to avoid being seen by Emily or anyone else who might alert her. When they reached David's room, they noticed subtle signs of his consciousness. David blinked and moved his fingers slightly, as if trying to communicate. "David, can you hear us?" Maria asked, leaning closer. In response, David blinked slowly, twice. "He's conscious!" Henry exclaimed, visibly moved. During one of these visits, they met Erica, a compassionate nurse who was caring for David. Erica, always observant and attentive, noticed David's small movements. "I've noticed he's showing subtle signs of consciousness," Erica said, confirming their suspicions. "He's showing signs of improvement, although he's still in an induced coma." With this new hope, Henry and Maria shared with David what was happening, using a discreet code to avoid raising suspicions. "David, we're going to help you," Henry whispered. "Blink once if you understand." David blinked once, clearly understanding. "Emily is making terrible changes in the company," Maria continued, her voice low and controlled. "She's fired loyal employees and is destroying everything you built." David, with visible effort, moved his fingers again, trying desperately to communicate. "Stay calm, David," Erica said, observing the signs. "We're on your side. We'll fight for you and what's yours." With each visit, Henry and Maria brought more information, carefully encoding their conversations so no one else could understand. They also began planning a way to expose Emily and her schemes, with the help of Erica, who had become a valuable ally. Meanwhile, Emily continued to cut costs wherever she could, unconcerned about the quality of the services. Her plan was clear: to squeeze as much profit as possible before selling the hotels. "These employees are all dispensable," Emily thought remorselessly. "All of this will be mine, and I'll do whatever it takes to ensure my financial security." But the trio of Maria, Henry, and Erica was determined to prevent Emily from destroying David's legacy. Each hospital visit brought new strategies and more hope. David, even trapped in his body, felt a renewed determination to fight against the betrayal and regain control of his life and businesses. Realizing the imminent danger, David decided to pretend to continue in a coma to gather more information. With each visit from Emily, he prepared mentally, keeping his expression and breathing constant. He knew that the best way to expose her was to obtain irrefutable evidence of her treacherous intentions. He listened attentively to Emily's conversations and noted her manipulative actions regarding his businesses and his team. One afternoon, Emily entered David's hospital room, carrying her inseparable phone. She settled into the chair next to the bed, her expression one of boredom. "Thomas, I'm at the hospital again," she said on the phone, not even glancing at David. "Yes, everything is going according to plan. I've fired Maria and cut costs drastically. We need to ensure we maximize profits before selling the hotels." David listened with a heavy heart, but remained motionless. Each word from Emily reinforced his determination to expose her schemes. "And what about Henry? He doesn't suspect anything?" Thomas asked on the other end of the line. "Henry is an old fool," Emily replied, laughing. "He has no idea what we're doing, and even if he suspected, who would believe him? He's been working for the family for years, but he's just a receptionist." David felt a surge of anger but controlled himself. He knew reacting now would be premature. He needed more evidence, needed to wait for the right moment to act. Every day, he grew stronger, waiting for the right moment to act. During visits from Henry, Maria, and Erica, David communicated his intentions subtly. "Blink once if you understand that you need to pretend a little longer," Maria whispered during one visit. David blinked once, confirming his agreement. Henry, with his experience and wisdom, began to secretly record Emily's conversations. He used a small recorder hidden in his pocket, hoping to capture enough evidence to confront her legally. "We have to be careful, Maria," Henry said in a private conversation. "Emily must not know we're gathering evidence. We need to catch her off guard." Maria and Erica agreed. They also began to scrutinize financial records and changes in employee contracts, looking for any irregularities that could be used against Emily. "She's destroying everything David built," Erica said, reviewing a financial report. "We can't let this happen." Meanwhile, David secretly practiced, trying to regain full control of his movements. He knew he couldn't stay in the hospital forever, and that he would soon need to be physically ready to confront Emily. "I will get out of this bed," David thought determinedly, "and I will reclaim what is mine." The day of revelation was approaching. Each visit from Emily and each conversation with Thomas added to the pile of evidence against her. David, with the silent help of his allies, was closer to exposing Emily than she could ever imagine. He patiently waited, knowing the right moment was about to arrive. When he finally acted, there would be no way for Emily to escape justice and the consequences of her treacherous actions. Together, David, Maria, Henry, and Erica devised a meticulous plan to expose Emily's betrayal and save the hotel chain. They knew they needed to act quickly and precisely to ensure that Emily was caught in the act. David feigned a new medical decline, groaning in pain and pretending to be weaker than ever. This performance led Emily to act rashly, believing her moment of victory was near. Emily, now convinced that David was on the brink of death, visited the hospital more frequently. She brought with her a small briefcase, which no one suspected would contain the fatal medication she planned to administer. "This ends today," Emily thought, as she walked down the hospital corridor, ignoring the concerned looks of the staff. Meanwhile, Maria and Henry worked behind the scenes to bring David's trusted lawyer, Mr. Anderson, to the hospital without raising suspicions. Mr. Anderson, a middle-aged man with an impeccable reputation, was shocked to hear what was happening. "We have to act with extreme caution," he said. "We cannot let Emily realize what we're doing until we have all the evidence." Erica, the nurse, used her position to install hidden cameras in David's room. "These cameras will record everything," she assured David and his allies. "We need to catch Emily in the act." The day of the big confrontation arrived. Emily entered David's room, looking confident and determined. She didn't notice the hidden cameras, nor did she suspect the presence of Mr. Anderson, who was hidden in an adjacent room, watching everything on a screen. "David, I'm sorry, but this is for the best," Emily murmured, taking a small vial from the briefcase. She prepared the injection, her heart racing with anticipation of the inheritance that would soon be hers. David, pretending to be unconscious, heard every word and felt adrenaline coursing through his body. He knew the moment of truth had arrived. "She's really doing this," he thought, a mix of horror and determination. When Emily approached to administer the injection, Erica entered the room under the pretext of checking David's vital signs. "Oh, Mrs. Harper, I didn't know you would be here now," Erica said, feigning surprise. Emily quickly hid the injection, but it was too late. "I just wanted to spend some time with my husband," Emily replied, trying to maintain her composure. At that moment, Maria and Henry entered the room with Mr. Anderson. "Emily, what are you doing?" Maria asked, feigning shock at seeing the open briefcase with the suspicious medication. "That's none of your business, Maria," Emily retorted, trying to regain control. "You've already been fired." "Actually, it is our business," Mr. Anderson intervened, showing his badge. "I am David's lawyer, and we're here to ensure he receives proper care." Emily turned pale, realizing something was wrong. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to disguise her anxiety. Henry, with a stern look, said, "We know what you're trying to do, Emily, and we have evidence." He pointed to the hidden cameras, now visible. Emily panicked and tried to escape, but Maria and Erica blocked the exit. "You're not going anywhere," Maria said. "We've already called the police." David, feeling it was safe to reveal his consciousness, opened his eyes and spoke with a weak but firm voice. "Emily, your game is over. You will not destroy everything we've built." Emily was stunned to see David conscious and speaking. This isn't possible," she stammered. Minutes later, the police arrived and took Emily into custody. Mr. Anderson handed over all the recordings and evidence to the authorities, ensuring that Emily would face justice for her actions. David, Maria, Henry, and Erica felt a wave of relief and triumph. "We did it," said Henry, smiling at David. "You're safe, and your hotels are too." David, still weak but determined, looked at his friends and allies. "Thank you, everyone. I couldn't have done this without you. Now let's rebuild everything, better and stronger than ever." David, realizing it was safe to reveal his consciousness, opened his eyes and tried to get up with the help of Maria and Henry. "Emily, your game is over," he said with a hoarse but firm voice. "You will not destroy everything we've built." Emily, shocked to see David conscious and speaking, began to sob. "David, please, I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do," she pleaded, trying to gain some sympathy. "Desperation is no excuse for betrayal," David replied coldly. "You made your choice, and now you have to live with the consequences." A few minutes later, the police arrived and arrested Emily and Thomas. Mr. Anderson handed over all the recordings and evidence to the authorities, ensuring that both would face justice for their actions. David, still weak but determined, looked at his friends and allies. "Thank you, everyone. I couldn't have done this without you. Now let's rebuild everything, better and stronger than ever." Maria, Henry, and Erica smiled, relieved and happy to have helped David overcome this ordeal. "We're with you, David," said Henry. "We'll bring back the glory of your business and ensure that none of this happens again." With Emily and Thomas out of the picture, David knew he had a long recovery ahead, both physically and emotionally. But with the support of his friends and loyal allies, he was ready to face any challenge the future might bring. Emily and Thomas were arrested and charged with attempted fraud and other crimes. David, though still recovering, felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He began his physical and emotional recovery, supported by his loyal team and by Erica, who had become an important figure in his life. With Emily out of the way, David regained control of his hotel chain. He reinstated fired employees, implemented fairer business practices, and began to revitalize his business. The loyalty of his employees, especially Maria and Henry, was rewarded with promotions and recognition. David's relationship with Erica blossomed, bringing a new chapter of happiness and hope into his life. Together, they planned a bright future, not just for the business, but also for David's personal life. David Harper was reborn from the ashes of his own tragedy, stronger and wiser. He learned about the true nature of love, loyalty, and betrayal. In the end, justice prevailed, and he could continue his journey with the certainty that he was surrounded by people who truly cared about him. And thus, the story of David Harper not only captivated, but also inspired all who heard it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more thrilling tales. What do you think David will do next with his newfound strength and support? Share your thoughts and stay tuned for what's coming next. It's going to be unmissable.